Shalom to all.
Shalom to all! Today's daf is Nedarim daf Ayin Vav. We are starting in the middle of the daf with the words Tashma. And today's daf is sponsored Lilu Nishmas, Mars, Miriam, Sarah, Basar, Yaakov, Moshe, her Neshama should have an Aliyah, and Lilu Nishmas, Mars, Freda, Chaya, Bela, Basar, Yitzchak, Tzvi, her Neshama should have an Aliyah. Now we're in the middle of a sugya. Rabbi Eliezer had said that a husband is allowed to preemptively be made for his wife's Nedarim. The question is, when she makes an eder, do we say that it's not chal at all, or do we say that it's chal for a moment and then the hafara kicks in? So the Gemara attempted to answer this with a few rayas, but none were conclusive. Now we have the final raya, Tashma. Rabbi Eliezer told the Chachamim, trying to prove his side of the argument that a husband is allowed to preemptively be made for his wife's Nedarim. U'mazram Tameim, when we're dealing with Tamei seeds, let's say bean or a piece of grain, which is Tamei, Kimish Zarn Bakarka, once it's planted in the ground, Tahirin, now it becomes tar, Zruin Va'imdum Kol Shekain. If something's already been planted and it's already in the ground, of course it's not going to be able to become Tamei. So too, if a husband can be made for his wife's neder after she makes it, so then he most definitely can preemptively be made for it. And again, that's Rabbi Eliezer explaining his shita to the Chachamim. But now what do we see from here? Shema Amino, we see from here, Loi Chaylin. The Rabbi Eliezer's shita is that when she makes a neder, it's not chal at all. Just like a plant which is currently growing can't become Tamei in the first place, so too a neder that she makes is not going to be chal at all. Now we're going to ask a question on the Chachamim. The Rabbanan don't darshan a kal v'chaimer similar to what Rabbi Eliezer darshans, but tiny we have a brayso. You might think that a person would be able to sell his daughter as a shifcha even after she became a naira. Amrit kal v'chaimer, so you say kal v'chaimer. Mechura kvar, if she was already sold before nairas, yaita she goes out free once she becomes a naira. Eina mechura, if she wasn't sold yet, and din shleiti macher, isn't the din that she's not able to be sold at all by her father? So what do we see from here? We see that the Chamim agree that something which can cause an end to something has the ability to prevent it as well. In this case of selling his daughter, even if she was sold, she goes free when she becomes a naira. In other words, her becoming a naira puts an end to her being a shevcha. So for sure, if she wasn't even sold yet and she becomes a naira, her father can't sell her anymore. So we see that the Chamim use such logic. Why don't they say the same by Nedarim? The Gemara Ayin Vav on Beis on top says you're right. In Ba'alma Darshi Kavachaimer. Generally, the Chamim will darshan such a Kavachaimer. The Shani Hacha, but over here it's different. Damar Kra, the pasuk says, Isha Yikimenu v'Isha Yifeirenu. Her husband will be making it, or her husband will be made for it. Esther Balachal Hakim Balachal Hafer, a neder which comes into the range of Akama, so he could be made for that as well. But Esther Loi Balachal Hakim, a neder that never came to the ability of Akama, because she never made it, Loi Balachal Hafer, so then it's not in the parsha of Hafara, he's not able to preemptively be made for his wife's Nedarim, and again, that's only because we have a special limit from a pasuk, but in general, Chachamim will use the same logic that Rabbi Eliezer does. And moving on to new Mishnah, the Mishnah tells us Hafar Nedarim Kol Hayom. The ability that a husband or father has to be made for neder is the entire day, which means the entire day that he heard the neder. Whatever day that he heard it on, he has that day, and that's it. And Yesh B'Davar L'Hakel L'Hachmir. This can turn out to be a cooler or a chumrah. Ketzad, how so? Najib Leili Shabbos. Let's say she made a neder on Leil Shabbos, Friday night. Yafer B'Leili Shabbos Ubiyayim Shabbos Ashetechshach. He's allowed to be made for it all of Friday night, all of Shabbos day, up until it gets dark, just before Matzah Shabbos. Najim Chashecha. But let's say she made a neder right before it got dark, made for Ashlei Techshach. He's only allowed to be made for it up until it gets dark. He has a very short amount of time to be made for it. Shem Chashcha B'Lei Hafer. Because if it got dark and he wasn't made for it, and Yachal Hafer, he's not able to be made for it anymore. Now the Gemara tells us Tanya, we have a brayso. Hafar Nedarim Kol Hayom. A father or husband can be made for a neder the entire day that he heard it. But now we have an argument. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Laz, Rabbi Shimon, Amru, they said Meis La'es, he has 24 hours to be made for it. Whenever he hears that neder, he has 24 hours from when he heard it. Now the Gemara asks my time in Tanakama, what's the reason Tanakama? Amar Kra, that's because the pasuk says B'Yom Shamai, on the day that he heard it. Mashma, only on that day. But once it gets dark that day that he heard it, he's not able to be made for it. Rabbanon my Tamaya, what's the reason in the Rabbanon? That's chsiv, because it says in the pasuk Miyayim El Yayim, from day to day. Mashma, a full 24-hour period. Ask the Gemara, Tanakama Haksiv Miyayim El Yayim. According to the Tanakama, it does say Miyayim El Yayim. Why does the Tanakama say that it's only up until the end of that day? So Gemara says it's still necessary for the Tanakama. The B'Yayim Shamai. If we only had the pasuk of B'Yayim Shamai, Havamina, I would think B'Yimama in Bilel Yalai, that he's only able to be made for a neder during the day, but not at night, because B'Yayim Shamai is mashma only during the day. So therefore, Ksiv Miyayim El Yayim, it says Miyayim El Yayim, telling us that he can even be made for it at night. The Gemara now asks, according to the man Amar, that we have this pasuk Miyam Hayom telling us that we have a full 24 hours to be made for a neder. Haksiv B'Yom Shamai. It does say B'Yom Shamai, implying that he only has the day that he heard it and not more than that. So Gemara says, no, it's check. We still need the pasuk. Diksiv Miyam Hayom. If it only said Miyam Hayom, Havamina, I would think Mechad B'Shabal Chad B'Shabal Leferla, that he's allowed to be made for it for her from Sunday to the next Sunday. He heard it on Sunday, so you might think that he has till next Sunday. That's Miyam El Yom, from this Sunday to next Sunday. Therefore, Ksiv B'Yom Shamai. Kamai on the day that he heard it, meaning on the day that he heard it, he has 24 hours to be made for it. Now, who do we paskin like? Amar Shem Pazi, Amar Shem Levi, Ein halacha ka'is azog. The halacha is not like that pair of Rabbanim, meaning we only have until nightfall of the day that he heard it, not 24 hours. And Levi Savar L'Mevik Hani Tanoi, Levi wanted to pass in a case like those Tanoim, but Amalei Rav told him, Hachi Amar Chavivi, this is what my uncle says, Ein halacha ka'is azog, the halacha is not like that pair. Now once we quoted something from Rav, we have another halacha from Rav, not related, talking about Hatara, not Hafara. Chia bar Rav, Chia the son of Rav, he was matir the neder in the following scenario. Shadi Gira, he shot an arrow, meaning he was in the middle of target practice, Ubadik, and he checked into the neder. Chia bar Rav held that one is allowed to be matir neder through Charata, without the need for a Pesach. Now when using a Pesach, the dayan needs to concentrate and focus properly on the case at hand, whereas Charata doesn't need this level of concentration. Hence this story that he was at target practice and was matir neder. As something similar, Rabbi bar Huna, Yosef V'Kayim, he would sit or he would stand, meaning he also treated Hatar Sandarim very lightly. It doesn't need a Pesach, it can be done by way of Charata, and therefore sometimes he would sit, sometimes he would stand, and it doesn't really make a difference what position he was in, he would be matir that neder. We're going to stop here for the day, pick up tomorrow, continuing to talk about Hafara and Hatara. For now, everyone should have a wonderful day.
Bepi Colombo.